Translator, Ninetales. Editor, Dark Dud. Thud. The corpses of Taoist Qi Yun and Taoist Xiao Yuan dropped heavily to the earth. Qin drew his sword back and stowed it away, then lifted his head to glance ahead. Long Jiaonan had already fled far into the distance. That red snake's speed was truly swift, and it would not be easy to catch up to her. Tonight, the messenger of death will have wandering souls to take away. It's only a pity we didn't manage to send Long Jiaonan on her way as well. This woman is indeed very intelligent. She also managed to escape back in the battle in Heaven Wave City. Qin let out a long breath, the tension in his chest finally easing. Now that Long Jiaonan was left to roam on her own, it would be hard for her to accomplish anything. If she dared come after him again, then she would certainly die. The reason this battle had gone so smoothly was largely because everyone coordinated perfectly. After all, Taoist Qi Yun's cultivation and strength were not low, and he was not any weaker than Long Jiaonan. Since Taoist Qi Yun carried a sword case, it meant he was most adept at sword battles. With Duqian Devil King using his 8 arms to block those sword strikes, Qin could charge right up to Taoist Qi Yun's side without the slightest worry. The Devil Ape's might lay in terrifying brute strength. With the Kakara Staff and Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, the Devil Ape's power was enough to stun Taoist Qi Yun, allowing Qin to take his life with a single decisive strike. Long Jiaonan's battle prowess lay mainly in that enormous red snake, refined until it was almost a flood dragon. The dragon Qilin, however, was the perfect counter to the red snake. Once he pinned it down with sheer strength, Long Jiaonan could no longer save Taoist Qi Yun. Because of this, the old man's fate was sealed. However, now that Long Jiaonan had escaped, Qin could not pursue her, because if he went after her, he would certainly die. His companions, Duqian Devil King, the Dragon Qilin, and the Devil Ape, sadly were not fast enough to catch up to her, so they could only let her get away. "Big fella, did little Rulay of Little Thunderclap Monastery give you trouble?" Qin asked. The Devil Ape shook his head, then pointed at himself. "My name Kong." Qin waited for a moment. The Devil Ape was likely speaking of his religious name, but what kind of religious name was only a single word? Was it truly Kong? And if it wasn't, then what was Kong? The Devil Ape seemed to think he had already made himself understood, and he did not say another word. This Devil Ape treated words like gold, and would never spend one extra. It's good for you to follow Little Rulai to cultivate. Little Rulai knows Rulai's Mahayana Sutra, and is a strange beast that achieved the Tao, so he is the most qualified to guide you in cultivation. Qin waved his hand and said, "My elders are lost, so I have to go find them, and I can't stay here any longer. Come home when you're free. Linger misses you too." The two of them then parted ways. Qin followed the direction pointed out by the messenger of death, and this time he no longer felt Long Jiaonan's gaze upon him. The girl must have decided she could not kill him, and thus withdrew. I wonder how the battle between Little Rulai and Taoist Ling Jing went. Even though Qin thoughts kept drifting to that fight, finding village chief, and the rest was more important. He sat down on the Dragon Qilin's forehead as it began to run forward, while Duqian Devil King chose to stand on its back, his 4 faces watching in 4 directions and noting every movement in the surroundings. The deeper they ventured into great ruins, the stronger the strange beasts became. Some of them possessed abilities no inferior to those of the Dragon Qilin or that enormous red snake. Fortunately, most of these strange beasts had their own territories. Having lived in great ruins since he was young, Qin was quite adept at distinguishing the boundaries of strange beast territories, so they could avoid them with ease on their journey and remain relatively safe. If we continue on, we'll reach Eastern Heavenly Gates. Qin recalled the geographical map of Great Ruins and the place marked upon it as Eastern Heavenly Gates. Besides it, there were 3 other places bearing the name Heavenly Gates, and they were obviously northern, western, and southern Heavenly Gates. At that moment, the Dragon Qilin suddenly came to a stop and sniffed the air. There's a scent of blood. This fellow is a huge dog and not a Dragon Qilin, Duqian Devil King thought to himself. Qin heart stirred slightly. Blood scent? Go and take a look. The Dragon Qilin followed the smell of blood, and after a moment, Chinmu saw an old Taoist in the distance, leaning against a tree and panting heavily. Taoist Ling Jing! Startled, Chinmu immediately called for the Dragon Qilin to halt. He has placed a restriction around him, so don't step into it. Taoist Ling Jing weakly lifted his head and glanced at him. As he drew a breath, he suddenly coughed violently and spat out a mouthful of blood. The eyes of Sword God's disciple are extraordinary. I'm injured, so I placed a restriction around myself to avoid being attacked by strange beasts. Chinmu said, Taoist, I'm proficient in the art of healing. Do you need my help? Taoist Ling Jing raised his hand and lifted the restriction. He tried to rise but could not move, so he said while gasping, Come over. Chinmu had the Dragon Qilin walk up to the tree. He then leapt down from its head and examined Taoist Ling Jing's injuries. This elder was gravely wounded, and these injuries were likely inflicted by little Rulai. The crucial point was that Taoist Ling Jing was quite old, and his body was no longer what it once had been. This made the injuries even more severe, and left him unable to recover naturally with ease. Chinmu muttered to himself as he took out the dragon's saliva to treat the external wounds. He then produced a few Spirit Buddha pills to mend the damage to Taoist Ling Jing's spirit. After that, he rummaged through his Taodi sack and took out some herbs he had purchased at Imperial College for emergencies. Even though there weren't many herbs, they were enough to refine spirit pills to address Taoist Ling Jing's injuries. Chinmu refined the spirit pills on the spot, his hand technique swift and flawless. Before long, a furnace of spirit pills was complete, and he had Taoist Ling Jing swallow them. Taoist Ling Jing's complexion immediately improved, and he said in astonishment, The disciple of Sword God actually has such high attainments in the art of healing. Little Tao friend, won't you be my disciple? I have many enemies, and with you by my side, you could ensure my safety. Don't worry, though the old Sword God is powerful, what I can teach you won't be any worse than him. Chinmu shook his head. I'm the cult master sacred teacher of Heavenly Devil Cult, so I can't become your disciple. So it's the Devil Cult master. Taoist Ling Jing struggled to get up, then bowed in greeting with a respectful expression. I thought I was above you in seniority, never expecting we'd be senior brothers of the same seniority. Ling Jing pays respects to Devil Cult master. Chinmu immediately returned the greeting. Senior brother Ling Jing is too polite. Your injuries aren't a problem now, but if you want to remove them at the root, you'll have to nurse yourself back to health. Taoist Ling Jing smiled. Seems it was the right choice to give you those 2 Fengdu coins. The old Sword God still owes me 2 Fengdu coins, but I reckon that fellow won't return them to me. He's pretty stingy, and he even chopped off one of my fingers back then. He opened his right hand and said, See. The ring finger on his right hand was missing, and it was clearly a sword wound. If it wasn't for this broken finger, how would little Rulay of Little Thunderclap Monastery have been able to injure me this heavily? However, his injuries are pretty severe as well. Without a divine physician at his side, I reckon he'll have to roll back to Little Thunderclap Monastery and suffer for 2 to 3 years before fully recovering. Taoist Ling Jing let out the breath he'd been holding. That fellow is younger than me and has a good foundation. He was the disciple of the previous Rulai and is the junior brother of the current Rulai. When the previous Rulai passed on the position to his senior brother, little Rulai was indignant and felt that the reason the previous Rulai did not pass the position to him was because he was from the demon race. So he slaughtered his way out of Great Thunderclap Monastery and founded Little Thunderclap Monastery. That's right. Why are you wandering in the depths of great ruins alone? Chinmu mixed several herbs together and brewed a medicinal decoction. The elders of my village have lost their way, so I've come out to look for them. Elders of your village? Taoist Ling Jing looked bewildered. It's none other than Old Sword God and the other elders. Among them are Jade Face Poison King, Thief God, Ma Wangshen, and also my Heavenly Devil Cult Patriarch. Has senior brother met them? Taoist Ling Jing was startled. All at once, he burst into laughter until tears nearly rolled down his cheeks. The wounds that had just knit together split open again, making the elder draw in a cold breath from the pain. Old Sword God and Heavenly Devil Cult Patriarch have lost their way? Those 2 old goofballs. They actually lost their way. He laughed until he could hardly breathe, and Chinmu immediately said, "Stop laughing, your wounds have opened up again. Has Senior Brother seen them?" "I haven't." Taoist Ling Jing shook his head. Chinmu then took out portraits of Old Ma, Granny C, and the rest and asked, "In that case, what about them?" Taoist Ling Jing examined the paintings and pondered. "I saw this blacksmith carrying a chest. His speed was extremely fast, and his ability was no weaker than mine. When I met him, we even competed in leg power. He didn't say a word and had a weird temper. It's rare to meet such a strong practitioner, but I had never heard of such an expert before." Chinmu's spirit surged. "That's Grandpa Mute from my village. Does Senior Brother know where he went?" Taoist Ling Jing replied, "He went into a restricted area. It's very treacherous there, so it's one of the most dangerous grounds in Great Ruins. I chased him all the way to that dangerous land, but did not enter. He's a mute? No wonder he gave me the cold shoulder when I was talking to him." Grandpa Mute went into a restricted area in Great Ruins? Chinmu grew tense again. He thought for a moment, then asked, "Has Senior Brother heard of Carefree Village before?" "Carefree Village?" Taoist Ling Jing shook his head. "I've never heard of it." Chinmu muttered to himself in indecision for a while. Taoist Ling Jing often wandered throughout Great Ruins and knew countless secrets that no one else knew. If even Taoist Ling Jing didn't know where Carefree Village was, then Chinmu had little hope of finding Carefree Village on his own. He pondered, then suddenly asked, "Senior Brother, can I ask you for a favor? I want to go to the living realm of the dead once more." Taoist Ling Jing smiled. "That's simple. When night comes, I'll bring you there." Chinmu steadied himself and continued healing the other's injuries. So when night arrived, Taoist Ling Jing had more or less recovered. He immediately led them into the darkness of Great Ruins and said, "The living realm of the dead is the territory of the King of Hell. This world is very mysterious, and the two worlds only overlap at night. If you want to enter the living realm of the dead, you need Fengdu coins. I've signed a contract with the King of Hell that after I die I won't go to Yudu, but will go straight to Fengdu." He looked around, then took out a token and shone it toward the darkness. "The origin of Fengdu is very strange. It has no fixed location, but drifts here and there within Great Ruins, forming a mysterious world of its own. I have a token of Fengdu, so as long as I activate it, an envoy of Fengdu will come and fetch me." As he finished speaking, a light shone over from between two huge mountains. Taoist Ling Jing immediately led Chinmu and the others toward it. That light alternated between bright and dim, guiding their steps. Before they realized it, they had passed several great mountains and drawn close to the light, only to see it was merely a ball of will-o'-the-wisp that suddenly vanished. The jade pendant on Chinmu's chest then released a ghostly glow and slowly floated upward to lead the way. Taoist Ling Jing guided Chinmu and the others forward until they passed through something that felt like a formless barrier. The scene before them abruptly changed, and the vast, mysterious living realm of the dead appeared. There, they could see a small boat sailing unhurriedly through a sea of fog among countless white bone mountains. Taoist Ling Jing brought Chinmu and the others to the boat, and the skeleton within carried them into the thick fog. After some time, they arrived at the docks. The stone tablet of the living realm of the dead stood right before them. Taoist Ling Jing asked with curiosity, "Devil Cult Master, what are you coming here for? Your cultivation is too weak, so even if you sell your soul, Fengdu won't want it." Chinmu walked forward, passing an empty village. After crossing the huge mountain ahead, he saw the incomparably massive moonship lying before Fengdu. It looked like a three-legged toad carrying an enormous ship. Once he spoke, he did so with solemn resolve. "I'm here to borrow a ship." "Borrow a ship?" Taoist Ling Jing froze for a moment, while Chinmu dashed forward at once. In no time, he broke through, and in just a few steps, landed on the moonship. On his chest, the jade pendant he had worn since he was young floated even higher, and the light it emitted grew brighter still. Duchin Devil King looked around, utterly shaken as he muttered, "Is this a god artifact? Visitor from Carefree Village." On the moonship, chaos reigned. The ruined star in the sky kept turning into fireballs that rained down without end, making the situation perilous. A strange, trembling voice rang out, You're from Carefree Village. What are you here for? I'm not a betrayer. I only escaped. Their deaths are not my fault. Hey, they're not my fault. I'm just a coward. Chinmu followed the voice and moved to the center of the moonship. Among several enormous pillars, a face spanning several acres was stuck to the ground, staring in terror at the jade pendant floating before Chinmu's chest. Not my fault. I didn't betray my tribesmen. That face shrieked. Chinmu hesitated for a moment, then let out an unsteady breath and extended his palm to touch one of the pillars. Taoist Lingjing frowned. I've been here before, and there was nothing here except this lunatic. I also checked these pillars before, but there were no abnormalities. Don't touch! That face screamed in despair. The instant Chinmu's palm made contact with the enormous pillar, an incomparably terrifying energy surged into his body. Cracking sounds erupted all around as his body grew taller and larger. The divine energy pouring in forced a dramatic transformation upon him. He felt his tailbone elongating wildly, becoming a third leg that thrust out from his back and planted itself firmly on the ground. Beneath his armpits, bones and flesh rapidly burgeoned, becoming arms. Bang, bang, bang! Chinmu spread his arms and seized the other pillars. Everything around him seemed to shrink at terrifying speed, yet that was only a misconception. He was the one growing larger. As the divine energy of the moonship rebuilt his body, deafening explosions boomed within him. The sound came from all his divine treasures opening at once. In the blink of an eye, 6 directions, 7 stars, celestial being, and life and death divine treasures had all opened. Even the divine bridge divine treasure opened and extended straight to the opposite shore. Chinmu could not hold back a howl, and as that howl rang out, the incomparably enormous moonship gradually rose to its feet. Then the broken moon drifted away into the distance. Translator Ninetales. Editor Dark Gem. Taoist Lingjing's face changed in an instant, and he retreated again and again. Duqian Devil King and the Dragon Qilin were likewise driven back by the crushing pressure of Chinmu's qi. Even after they had been forced thousands of yards away, they still could not plant their feet steadily. Meanwhile, beneath Chinmu's soles, the Moon Guardian's face had been pressed down into the moon ship, sunken by the force of that step. He had originally still been clinging to life by a single thread, yet the moment he was stepped upon, he merged completely into the moon ship, becoming part of it and dying. The old Moon Guardian died. Taoist Lingjing's heart trembled. The death of that old Moon Guardian meant nothing to him. This person had been a madman, but the swelling growth of Chinmu's body seized all his attention. That youth had actually shattered the shackles of the living realm of the dead. Upon entering the living realm of the dead, even an existence like Taoist Lingjing would have his blood and flesh stripped clean, leaving only a walking skeleton behind. When Chinmu had entered here alongside him, he too had been left with only bones. The Dragon Qilin was the same, while Duqian Devil King showed no change only because he had neither flesh nor bone to begin with. Yet now, not only had Chinmu's flesh returned, his body had also grown larger and larger, as though he were a heavenly god wreathed in divine radiance. He had replaced the last Moon Guardian of the Moon Herders and become the new Moon Guardian. The power he now grasped was far too fierce. It had torn through the limits of the living realm of the dead, leaving them utterly helpless to resist. Such a thing was almost impossible. Taoist Lingjing had come to this moonship many times and examined all within it over and over. He had laid hands upon those pillars countless times, yet he had never undergone anything as astonishing as Chinmu. He had believed only the Moon Herders possessed such an ability, and not even all of them, but only those born with a special constitution. The human body is like a vast smelting furnace. An ordinary moon herder should not be able to contain the terrifying energy of the moonship, and only those with a special constitution could accept so great an influx of power. The moon herders should have long since been exterminated, leaving only this elder upon the ship as their last remnant. And now, he too had sunk into the moonship and lost his life. For Chinmu to be able to command the moonship and its energy, could he be a moon herder, and one of those with a special constitution among their kind? However, Chinmu was not a moon herder. To seize those enormous pillars was an act of extreme peril to anyone else, even to moon herders. Yet for him it was exceedingly safe, as though his body could naturally endure this force, automatically rebuilding his flesh and soul to bear it. What powerful energy! Chinmu was both startled and overjoyed. The energy within him had reached an unfathomable realm, giving him the sensation that his former strength had been but a single droplet before an ocean, utterly insignificant. Now with a mere lift of his hand, he felt as though he could remake mountains and rivers, alter and even grasp the rules of the world in his palm. Rings of moonlight cloaked Chinmu's surroundings. Those rings seemed to pour from the crown of his head like flowing water, cascading down to his feet before vanishing into the moon ship. His feet had already begun to sink inward, fusing into the ship. This was the moon ship's counterattack. Chinmu had once witnessed such a counterattack upon the body of the Sun Guardian of the Sun ship. The Sun Guardian was the Sun Herder Yan Jingjing. Because the sun of the Sun ship had been extinguished, she had been forced to burn away her lifespan to control it and endure its boundless energy. The longer she commanded the Sun ship, the faster her life was drained. The broken moon above the moon ship had likewise been extinguished, with no light spilling from it. For Chinmu to control the ship and borrow its power, the price was his own life. He had to move quickly, borrow the moon ship's might and speed, plunge deeper into the darkness, and find Carefree Village, the village chief, and all the villagers. Otherwise, if he wished to break free later, the price would grow too enormous for him to bear. Senior Brother Lingjing, thank you for your help. Chinmu looked down upon him from above and spoke in a voice like a thunder bell. But now, while the darkness still remains, I must find the village chief and the rest. Farewell. Taoist Lingjing suppressed the shock in his heart and flew off the moon ship, hovering in midair. This Taoist was now nothing but bones, and the Taoist robe upon him had become ragged and torn. He raised his head and said, "Cult Master, please!" Boom! The enormous moon ship took a step. Beneath its body, the shapes of majestic mountains formed the outline of a three-legged toad. With a single stride, it could span 10 miles. In only a few steps, the moon ship walked out through the gate of Fengdu, dragging behind it the broken black moon still hanging in midair by its chains, and leaving the living realm of the dead. Meanwhile, within Fengdu, the powerful practitioners all flew out to watch as the moon ship's traces vanished into the distance. These strong practitioners of Fengdu did not pursue. When the moon ship had entered Fengdu back in the day, the Yama of Fengdu had not received the Moon Guardian. He had only allowed the moon ship to remain in the wasteland outside the city. Now that the moon ship was departing, the Yama of Fengdu could not be bothered to pay it any heed. A bird-headed, human-bodied mutant flapped over and called to Taoist Lingjing. "Taoist Lingjing, Yama requests the pleasure of seeing you." Taoist Lingjing immediately followed him into Fengdu and entered the hall of Yamaraja. At this moment, tens of thousands of yards of light shone from Chinmu's body, making him appear like a heavenly god forged from moonlight itself. He controlled the enormous ship to leave the living realm of the dead, cross the sea of fog, and enter the great ruins shrouded in darkness. He could feel the boundless energy surging within him. Every single divine treasure in his body had opened. Whether spirit embryo, 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 stars, celestial being, life and death, or divine bridge, each was flooded with terrifying power, and still more energy continued to pour in. Within the moon ship were incomparably complex formations. The moment his palm had touched the huge pillar, those formations were stirred awake. Boundless energy rushed into him to rebuild his body, his soul, his spirit embryo, and to let his realm surpass divine bridge, reaching an unimaginable state, the realm of heavenly gods. It was hard to imagine what height this energy would reach if the ship were whole and complete. Carefree Village. Village Chief, I'm coming. As the massive moon ship advanced through the darkness, the scenery around it flashed past like flickering lights and passing shadows. The jade pendant at Chinmu's neck had also grown huge. It floated up into the night and pointed toward a faraway place within the dark. Suddenly, that jade pendant slipped free from his neck and shot into the distance. Chinmu drove the moon ship to increase its speed, refusing to lose the jade pendant as it flew swiftly through the darkness. As the ship moved faster, it compressed space itself, and thunder and lightning erupted together, continuously ripping the darkness apart. Above the moonship, enormous rocks fell without end from the broken moon. As they streaked across the sky, fiery trails burned behind them as they plunged into the darkness of the great ruins. Wherever the moonship walked, meteors followed in its wake. Fire and smoke filled the ship's surroundings, stinging the eyes. Upon the moonship's deck stood palaces too numerous to count. This had been the dwelling place of the Moonherders, but after a great battle, they had all been wiped out. The last Moonherder had been the Moon Guardian, yet even he had been consumed by the moonship when Chinmu became the new Moon Guardian. Duchin Devil King and the dragon Chillin hid within a palace that had not yet collapsed, seeking shelter from Chinmu's world-shaking aura. The dragon Chillin soon shut his eyes amid the constant tremors and fell asleep. Duchin Devil King felt no drowsiness, so he peered out through the palace window. He could see the majestic Chinmu standing at the center of the pillars, like a towering mountain. His power had taken form as rings of moonlight cascading down his body, terrifying beyond measure. This world is not as lowly as I once believed. These god artifacts demand an incomparably profound path, skills, and divine arts. It is not something an ordinary civilization could ever forge. Duchin Devil King's gaze flickered, and he found himself at a loss. Am I truly going to invade such a world? What I fear is not the heights this world's civilization once reached, but the thing that destroyed something like it. Countless monsters within the darkness of the great ruins were alarmed and surged over. Though these monsters were enormous, beside the moonship, they were like ants, and slow as well. The moonship crushed them all. Amid the unending booms, faint crunching sounds could also be heard. Who could say how many mysterious organisms had been flattened into pancakes and ground into a heap of mush within the dark? Countless devils also threw themselves toward the moonship, devil voices ringing out. They did their utmost to board this land ship, yet they were immediately slain by the lightning born from the moonship's movement, and their corpses fell like rain. Candra Nava, Sanskrit, moonship. Within the darkness, a terrifying aura surged, and a black figure grew larger and larger. With feathers like clouds, it flew in from the dark and leaped into the thunder layer formed by the moonship, bringing devil clouds to invade it. From those devil clouds, the enormous devil thrust out its heads, and all 9 spewed devil flames toward Chinmu at the center of the pillars. The blazing flames lit the night sky, and within the rolling clouds the vast devil's body could be seen. It seemed both bird and flood dragon, as though it were a monster fused from 2 different species. Garuda! Duchin Devil King cried out in astonishment. Moonlight coiled around Chinmu's body, blocking the devil flames. Suddenly, a crescent opened in the center of his brow and slowly turned into a full moon, like a door unfolding. Soon, a full moon appeared in the heart of his brows. It was not a true moon, but an eye that shone with a light like moonlight. Pew! A snow-white radiance flashed across the horizon and cleaved the darkness apart. It cut through the devil flames that filled the sky, and the devils' heads began to drop from mid-air. Exactly 9, no more and no less. While behind them, necks writhed like dragons and sprayed blood. The full moon on Chinmu's forehead slowly closed, becoming a crescent once more, and then vanished as well. Duchin Devil King shut his mouth and said, "Not a single word. After this brat lets me go, I will definitely not invade this twisted world." The moonship continued onward, while devils still surged toward it. Suddenly, shrieks burst from the darkness, and the countless devils abruptly retreated, melting back into the dark. Chinmu's jade pendant, floating before the ship, looked incomparably tiny, as though it were a speck of dust. Suddenly, it clanked, as if it had struck an invisible barrier. Like lake water stretched upright from heaven to earth, ripples began to gently undulate across that barrier. They spread outward with the jade pendant at the center, growing wider and wider. Meanwhile, at the heart of the ripples, another world gradually revealed the tip of its grandeur. This was Carefree Village.